Jeff Reynolds and I did a PowerPoint to lay out some of the issues involved in frac truck convoys and how they might affect upstate towns and villages. Fracking a shale well requires unprecedented amounts of fluids, and that equates to hundreds and thousands of truckloads to and from the well site. Those trucks travel in convoys, and the impact of that trucking can be devastating to a township or to a village. Fluid has to be trucked to the well site. Water, chemicals used to frack the well. That'll equate to 400 to 600 tanker truckloads going to the well. 2.4 to 7.8 million gallons of water per well. Thousands of gallons of chemicals, fracking fluids, trucked to the well. After the well is fracked, the wastewater comes back out of the frack. The well has to be dewatered. That frack wastewater has to be removed, so that equates to 200 to 300 tanker truckloads of wastewater that has to be removed from the well site. It's classified as industrial waste. In the Marcellus, it's laced with radium. It's got to be taken to a disposal well or to a processing facility, recycling facility, remote from the well site. The number of truckloads per well has been studied in Texas, and Denton County did a study of it. It estimated a minimum of about 600 truckloads per well. The DEC in New York has estimated anywhere from almost 900 to almost 1,400 truckloads. That includes drill pipe, cement casing, drilling mud, seismic, as well as the fracking fluid, the water used for the frack, and of course the trucking the wastewater away from the well site. When the well is being drilled, that goes on 24/7, goes on nonstop. So some of these operations will peak, but when they're most active, the trucks will roll in convoys all the time, night and day. Since the truck is going to go to and from the well, it's going to go down the route twice. So that equates to anywhere from 1,800 to 2,600 drive-bys at any point on the route. If there's 8 wells on a pad site, that the math is almost 15,000 drive-bys to almost 21,000 drive-bys along the route. The trucks, particularly the tankers, are going to go in convoys. That impacts the roads and bridges can be damaged. Of course, it creates diesel smoke. And at certain points in the operation, that means that there'll be noise pollution on the route night and day. This can go on in the Marcellus and the Utica literally for decades. The amount of truck traffic will fluctuate. Like when the well's being drilled, it'll be nonstop. It'll be day and night. The chemicals, the fracking fluid, have got to be on the site before the well is fracked. So it'll peak at that point. When the frack water starts to come back, it has to be removed out of the flow pits. So that'll peak the frack wastewater flow back coming out of from the well site. Trucks will be coming out of yards. They'll be going to disposal sites to dispose of the frack waste. They'll be going to recycling centers to dispose of the frack waste. So there will be some convergence of traffic going to and from those yards and the disposal sites. There'll also be overlaps of the routes to different wells. When they converge, there'll be traffic. That traffic, when a convoy comes through, local traffic will basically come to a standstill. There's no clear alternative to trucks in this sort of an operation in fracking horizontal shale well. If you drill a water well near the well site, you're going to draw down the water table in the area because of the amount of water that's going to be pulled. If you pull water out of a river, which actually I have in New Mexico, then Well, that generally means you're certainly going to be in the watershed. You may even be in the floodplain. Railroad tank cars don't have the kind of coverage that would be necessary for this disperse activity. There's been some discussion about using propane. It's been tried in Canada. It's not economic. In theory, the frack waste could be recycled on site. It hasn't been done. Even if it was recycled on site, that you'd still be at about 1,000 truckloads. So no matter how you cut it, there's going to be a lot of frack convoys. Another phenomena of this, the hurry-up nature of this activity is that particularly and most of the truckers that carry the water, carry the frack waste, are contract truckers. That means that they're getting paid by the load, and they have an incentive to speed. They got to get the frack waste out of there, or they got to get the fracking fluid to the site. So the faster they go, the more loads they've got, the more they get paid. They're going to do that 24/7. They'll be speeding through at 4 in the morning. They'll be traveling in convoys for lots of reasons. One simple reason is that means the first guy in the convoy gets the ticket. A lot of these drivers, believe it or not, are not going to be from New York. They may take that ticket, and before they even hit the state line, they'll just tear it up and throw it out the window. Obviously, there's been a lot of this activity in the Barnett Shale and the Fort Worth Basin in Texas. But the fact is that the impact in Texas is not as great as it would be in upstate New York. For one reason, there's no 200-year-old villages. Most of the small towns in Texas were developed after the advent of the automobile, so they're basically on the highway. That's all there is to the town. If it's a bigger town, the highway typically bypasses the town center. And if it's a county seat, it'll have a county courthouse or a town square, and the highway at worst would be on one side of the square, and generally miss the square by a couple of blocks anyway. So frankly it's a different situation vis-a-vis its impact on small towns. Jeff Reynolds photoshopped some pictures of typical drilling and fracking trucks. This one happens to be River Street in Maine. That's the Main Street bridge coming in east into the village of Cooperstown. Those I think are Halliburton probably trucks. They're not tankers per se, but that gives you an idea. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 trucks shown in that image, and if that was a tanker convoy, there'd be 100 trucks coming into town like that. Needless to say, these frack convoys are not going to stop. They're not going to stop to buy a Yankees cap. They're not going to stop to buy a cup of coffee. They're going to barrel through on their way to their appointed routes. The impact on real estate values is going to be negative. Any merchant, any building owner, any homeowner that's on that truck route is going to see their property values go down. The impact is going to be concentrated in village centers or at crossroads, but it will be felt on any highway, on any rural road, any road that leads to a well site or from a well site. There will be frack convoys, and they won't slow down. If your town or village doesn't have a road use ordinance, if it doesn't have a land use ordinance, then any road in that village, any road in that town is vulnerable, because any one of these trucks can go anywhere it can make the turn. It's up to the town supervisor, it's up to the town trustees, it's up to the voters to do something about this. In Texas and other states, there are road use ordinances that basically set forth routes that heavy trucks can take. New York has a similar law. Local road use controls are allowed under Municipal Home Rule Law 10 in New York and under the New York Vehicular and Traffic Law. That applies to counties, to towns, to cities, to villages. But that also means that those municipalities have to act. The DEC is not going to do this. They're not going to help you. The DOT is not going to help you. the municipality has to act. The New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law allows a town, a municipality, to designate routes for trucks that weigh over 10,000 pounds. It allows route closure and a permitting for trucks that weigh over 8,000 pounds. It allows for methods to indemnify the municipality against road and bridge damage. And there are, of course, exceptions for moving vans, for delivery trucks, for UPS, you name it. But you got to get your own law to do this, and you have to enforce it. To address this, your town or village needs a land use plan. It needs a land use ordinance. It needs a truck route, a road use ordinance, and it needs to be able to enforce all of the above. The road use ordinance is only as good as the land use plan. I've never seen a road use ordinance that was done in a vacuum. It needs to be tied to a land use plan. Fortunately, there's some land planners and some attorneys in the state that know how to deal with these things. Locally, Nan Stolzenberg does land plans. She can include a road use plan in that land plan. Michelle Kennedy, operating out of Cooperstown, can work with the town attorney. If the town attorney is clueless, she can probably do it herself. But I'd encourage you to contact both of them. This is up to you. If your town supervisor doesn't get on this, get yourself a new town supervisor. If your town or village trustees don't address this, get yourself some new trustees. Let's get busy. Thank you.